Alright, we are on our last vlog for racism being expressed in the novel by Harper Lee, and there are many more examples in this novel. Obviously, I didn't go through all of them, but there's many more examples, and I wanted to touch again on chapter 14 because there's some good stuff in here. And so, next is Aunt Alexandra and Atticus. We see some tension occurring between the two because Aunt Alexandra, she really plays like a good role and embodies the typical adult in the county and typical adult in general because she has the same belief system as pretty much any other adult there. She has some type of disrespect towards colored people. She doesn't agree with her brother's choices or Atticus letting Calpurnia basically take care of the kids, and she just doesn't even really want her being the servant either. She just doesn't have a good respect or and doesn't understand why Atticus is moving out of his way, out of society, than the norm of what other people are doing and what she's believing. And so we see a really good dialogue play out as Atticus learns that the children went to the colored church with Calpurnia. He had no idea, and Aunt Alexandra happened to be in the background and heard it all and started disagreeing as well. And so, page 181, this is when Scout's asking Atticus the question about what is rape. And so she says, well, I asked Calpurnia coming from church that day what it was, and she said ask you, but I forgot to, and now I'm asking you. His paper was now in his lap. Again, please, he said. I told him in detail about our trip to church with Calpurnia. Atticus seemed to enjoy it, but Aunt Alexandra, who was sitting in the corner quietly sewing, put down her embroidery and stared at us. You all were coming back from Calpurnia's church that Sunday? Jem said. Yes, she took us, and I remembered something. Yes, and she promised me I could come out to her house some afternoon. Atticus, I'll go next Sunday if it's all right. Can I? Cal said she'd come get me if you were off in the car. You may not. Aunt Alexandra said it. I wheeled around, startled, then turned back to Atticus in time to catch a swift glance at her, but it was too late. I said, I didn't ask you. For a big man, Atticus could get up and down from a chair faster than anyone I ever knew. He was on his feet. Apologize to your aunt, he said. I didn't ask her, I asked you. Atticus turned his head and pinned me to the wall with his good eye. His voice was deadly. First, apologize to your aunt. I'm sorry, I muttered. Now, let's get this clear. You do as Calpurnia tells you, you do as I tell you, and as long as your aunt's in this house, you will do as she tells you. Understood? And so, I think this is a really good example of Scout really not being able to understand why Aunt Alexandra refuses to let her go back to church. Obviously, she knows Calpurnia's ancestry with slavery. Obviously, she has witnessed the racism, but she really doesn't understand why Aunt Alexandra is like this when Atticus is the exact opposite, and that makes complete sense. So I think what Lee does really well in this novel is she really uses the children and their perplexity and their confusion of how Maycomb society is dealing with racism to really critique like the role of the class system and how racism's played out and how white have power over the colored people. It's just really prejudiced to human interaction in a way. And so to move further, like I was saying, how Aunt Alexandra just really doesn't agree with his choices. She goes, you've got to do something about her. You've let things go on too long, Atticus, too long. And then he says, I don't see any harm in letting her go out there. Cal'd look after her there as well as she does here. And so the fact that she's defending her again further proves the difference between Atticus and Aunt Alexandra, also further proving why Scout just doesn't understand. And so I think to wrap it all up, what Harper Lee's trying to say about racism is that it's really, obviously it's wrong. And it's wrong because you're hurting someone and you're disrespecting someone who hasn't harmed you. And all of them are innocent, all the colored people are innocent, and they didn't have as much rights as the white people did. And it was literally a class system in a small county. And so she's trying to say that they lived hard lives and society is just judgmental, irrational, racist, obviously. And she, like I said earlier, she really uses the kids to examine that and their confusion to really critique the whole thing. And throughout the novel, I think it's cool how they learn to cope with it and take responsibility and are introduced to new aspects of life. So